Welcome back to Fresh Economic Thinking with Cameron Murray. Today, a special joint episode with Ben Beattie of the Baseload podcast. I spent some time chatting with Ben about the state of conversation on energy, policy and economics in Australia. So here it is, Ben Beattie and Cameron Murray. Enjoy.
Cameron Murray, welcome to the Baseload podcast.
Thanks for having me, Ben.
Now, I've wanted to talk to you for a little while on the socials. You're not afraid to jump in and cause a bit of a splash. Sometimes it comes out well. Sometimes you get a bit of pushback.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to conform with every crowd that's out there. If you're not making enemies, you might not be saying anything interesting.
You reckon a good strategy is to be hated equally by everyone?
Look, I think that's an outcome. If you're thinking for yourself, everyone's going to hate something you say.
It's a potential outcome. It's a risk. Yeah?
It's a risk. If no one hates you, you're not saying anything. If only one tribe hates you, that's probably not ideal either. So indeed. I think you're converging to something sensible if everyone doesn't like something you're saying.
Well, I'm glad you said tribes, because we're here to talk about energy, and it's becoming increasingly tribal. Unfortunately, and I don't think that's good for us. I wanted to. You're a good example of, I guess, and I mentioned this slightly before we started recording, which is from an outside looking in. So you're an economist. You're not an energy trained guy, but you do think critically, and you're not afraid to have some opinions. What's your thoughts on the whole system, focusing on Australia at the moment?
In terms of the energy conversation, policy-wise?
Yeah, I guess I'd open it up to not just your thoughts on the policy and what's going on, but on the debate itself.
Yeah, look, I sense that there was a period maybe a decade ago where it was sort of bipartisan. We all agreed that renewables are coming down in price. That's probably the right thing to do. If you incorporate externalities, so, the climate risks or whatever, into some cost benefit, it kind of converges and makes a little bit of sense to do it. I think what's happened in the last few years is the cost benefit we all sort of agreed on socially a decade ago was wrong. Like, quite wrong.
Is this the climate thing, or just the pure cost of energy transition?
Just the pure cost of replacing fossil fuels, whether it's oil, gas, coal, for, putting fuel in tanker ships, aeroplanes, cars, or keeping the electricity on. I think we really underestimated it. We sort of convinced ourselves we want to do it, therefore it must be okay and easy and appropriate. And then the reality hit. And although the cost of solar panels has come down, and potentially even the wind turbines, and we've got more efficiency with bigger turbines, it was actually never the energy, the conversion of sunlight to electricity that was the costly part. I think people had this idea that, well, the sunlight's free, therefore, if I can get the solar panel costs down, that's even more free, right? Forgetting that we don't want electricity when the sun's shining, where it's shining. If it's shining, we want electricity 100% of the time, all year round, where everybody is. And those are actually different things. And I think that's what we've underappreciated. And I think guys like Aidan Morrison have really been able to articulate that to a non-technical audience. And so even though that converting sunlight to energy when it's shining where the solar panels are has come down in price, converting that to what we want, there's this intermediate step, which is actually where the cost is. And I guess I've actually shifted quite a lot in my view as well, as an outsider looking in and learning the economics of that intermediate part. And I think one thing I've sort of come to the view of is that everyone thinks, well, if that's free, everything must be free, right? If converting sunlight to energy at that point is free, then why isn't it cheaper for the retail once it's reliable and distributed? And I think I've come up with a good analogy to summarize my view.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Well, the coal is free as well. And the coal is energy in the ground at a point in time, at a place. The coal's free too. The sunlight's free too. The energy in the coal is free.
They're not even subject to inflation or anything
Right.
else, right?
You can say, oh, you pay some royalties, right? But traditionally, that wasn't very much. But even then, the royalty is a transfer to the state. It's a redistribution. And so the energy in the coal is free as well, right? So I think we were tricked by this sort of bias we have in our minds of thinking physically that, oh, the coal, it's costly to get it out of the ground and ship it. And I'm like, yes, the relocation of the energy is the costly part. The same is true with the solar and wind. Getting it from where it's windy or where it's sunny is the expensive part. And so that's been my sort of mental transformation as an outsider, learning that, hey, guys, the thing that's gotten cheaper that we thought in the cost benefit wasn't actually the main economic story in the transition. Once we add the cost of shifting energy around, just like the cost of converting coal into electricity and transferring that electricity through power lines is where the cost is, then the orders of magnitude change on the price, right?
Yep.
So that's my lesson as an outsider. And I think politically we've shifted from everyone agreeing that that's true to one side of politics now recognizing that. The same journey I've had, recognizing that actually the cost was never converting sunlight when it's sunny. The cost was the reliable system and getting electricity where it needs. The one side of politics is sort of walking that way, and the Labor Party, the left, whoever, still wants to believe that and can't walk away ideologically or intellectually just yet.
I'm a little more cynical. I'm not going to give them as much slack as you have, Cameron. I think the major people who matter within the political parties all know that it's costly. And that's one of the reasons why the conversation has not focused on the actual costs and why we're like you correctly diagnosed, the sun's free, so therefore it should be cheaper all over, right? But there's a lot more than just a few solar panels in getting electricity to people's houses. And one of the conversations that's coming up now is, well, we've got to have batteries and we've got to democratize the electricity system so that gets rid of all the costs, right? But unfortunately, that's also misinformation.
Well, batteries aren't free. They're by definition much less free than the sun shining. Right?
Indeed. And no one with a battery and solar panels is disconnecting from the greater system.
Yeah. I think it's odd, right? Like, to get to your point about giving people slack, I've learned, I feel like that's another area where my views changed over time. We're social creatures. We think with our tribes. We don't think like engineers, like, is that really going to work? Like, we should know before we build it. And so I sort of...
Are you going to become more forgiving or less forgiving over time?
Haven't decided which way it goes, right? Like, so I definitely, in terms of, the politicians know this, but they're saying that. It's true to a degree, but in general, once there's a critical mass of people in a social tribe that have changed their mind, the whole tribe will move.
This is the politics downstream of culture. Therefore, the politicians have to respond eventually, right?
I think that's true.
Chris Bowen was on a podcast just recently, a Dan Ilick podcast.
I don't know that guy.
No, I've come across him once or twice. Okay. I think he's ex ABC. Uh-huh. But Chris Bowen actually said that his main aim of this term of government is to lock in the transition so it can't be changed. And I'm like, okay. Not a real fan of that, and I'm becoming less forgiving because the more I understand and go on this autodidactic bloody tour that I'm on at the moment with the market side of it, is that so many of these people, or the experts, they actually do know that this is going to cost a lot more. They just won't say so. Do you have any thoughts on how that might occur? Is it just a green bubble and
next interview we'll bring my wife, who's a psychologist, and we can get we can get into the sort of self-deception part. But I also think it's true that we're better at deceiving ourselves than others, and so
believing our own bullshit.
Yeah, and when we want to believe, we can overlook those little tiny things. And that happens in economics all the time, right? There'll be this one crucial assumption that you hang everything on, and you kind of know it's wrong, but no one else is saying that, and your tribe thinks it's okay, and, with a bit of luck, it won't matter.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so you do hold on to the rest of those beliefs, and maybe there is this subconscious um, part of our mind that recognizes it, but wants to sort of hold the other beliefs until such time, because once this little thing unravels, right? This
Hmm.
little assumption that, oh, the sunlight's free, therefore the system's cheap. Once that little assumption turns,
Once the link's
you have
broken.
to
Yep.
rebuild a belief system that is hanging off that.
And
And
if you're
that,
very invested in that belief system with a lot of public speaking and a lot of policy, and if it turns out to be wrong, you're going to defend it at all costs, right?
that's right. And that's why beliefs change socially, because if you're unraveling a belief and changing to a new one, if everyone else is doing it at the same time, then it feels okay and our minds
Okay.
can manage it. But
Yep.
I think if you're doing it by yourself, you're basically making enemies of all your previous friends who used to believe the opposite.
In the extreme, you're saying you're all wrong.
Yeah. And so I think that's, when I say one side of politics has seen that social change in belief, I think that's true. I think the liberals, the right, who've always been willing to be critical of the climate change thing, unless it was cheaper, um, they've all sort of cascaded in that social change, and that cascade hasn't happened. But
Mm.
I suspect when globally, right? I suspect when broader global tribes change, when there's the nuclear renaissance that's happening globally, it's going to be even harder to hang on to old beliefs. That would be my suspicion.
Okay. Yeah,
Do you
that's
think that
interesting.
makes sense?
It does, yeah. Like and that ties into the tribal thoughts
Mm.
that I have about it, which is it's a shame that more people can't dive into sort of the logic and the facts and scratch the surface. And I think partly is because the topic of energy and electricity system is so dry and quite dense, and it gets complicated very quickly. I think it puts people off a little bit, which is why I try and break it down into as simple things as possible when I'm talking to people. So we'll just ask the question. Here's what your supply chain is for your electricity. It's got, like you said, you got stuff in the ground, you got stuff in the sun, you got even got some rain. Rain's free, but
Yeah,
it
yeah,
says
yeah, that's right.
hydropower free. I don't know. So you get through all that, and you go, okay. Then the poles and wires, getting it around, and you've got some retailers because you can't just do it on your own.
Yeah.
There's some costs there. It's a supply chain. So which one of those is does renewables make cheaper for everybody? And this is I think that's a really interesting question. If more people asked, then we might
Yeah.
have a better conversation.
I think so. I think what you've just said about it gets a bit technical quickly. I think you've stumbled onto this this pattern that I notice a lot. People have this sort of physical view of the world. It's very hard to zoom out and think about a whole system of interacting parts. And so you've sort of, in your explanation, said, okay, why don't we not think of this as a system, but it's just components of a supply chain. Let's consider the whole system as one physical thing.
This is the classic engineering strategy, right? Break
Yeah.
it down into smaller blocks and work on each one.
Yeah. But it's in general true. Once you get any interaction or system thinking, people just their minds fall apart.
Yeah, of
Because they're
course.
like, you're telling me that it's not just a straight line, this plus this plus this. So that's very difficult. But perhaps it's worth pointing out to you that on this changing minds and tribes, and it gets technical. One of the things that made me change my mind was on nuclear power, because there was this story about nuclear waste being this ridiculously difficult thing, and it's going to outlast humanity itself. And when you think about that as a linear thing, 1,000 years into the future, and a few hundred years of modern industrial society, it becomes a bit overwhelming, and you feel like it must be bad, right? How can we produce this thing that's bigger than all of us?
Mhm.
But I was asked to do some research on nuclear waste because Australia is proposing a nuclear waste dump. And it wasn't that difficult, actually, to learn. There's a few bits of jargon to pick up to realize that actually there's hardly any nuclear waste, and our nuclear waste, our highly radioactive waste from what's our plant? Lucas Heights reactor
in Sydney. Yeah.
was not this terrible thing that we had to bury deep underground. The French wanted it. We put it on a ship to France so they could put it in their breeder reactor and get more energy out of it. And I'm just sitting here thinking, why isn't that common knowledge? Why is this fear story so big? And
Mm.
so by the end of doing that report, I went from nuclear waste is bad. Yeah, we got to chuck it deep underground in the middle of the desert to where is the issue here?
So you kind of turned the corner from skeptical to optimistic.
I did, and it didn't take very much. This is just like a few weeks, few emails, phone calls, a bit of reading,
Mm.
and all of a sudden, because I'm paid to look for a problem and I can't find it, I have to think, where is it? And I actually asked the client. This was like a social tipping point, right? I said, okay, so you don't want a nuclear waste dump in the desert. Where do you want the nuclear waste to be? Like, tell me your solution. And they said, oh, we should leave it at the reactor site in Sydney. And I'm like, so you clearly don't think it's dangerous or a risk.
You don't need to remove it from.
You don't
the
need
people.
to remove it from there. You're basically saying it's not a problem. And I'm just sitting there. My mind, you can imagine, right? I've got this belief, Helen Caldicott, remember this
I've
woman
heard the name. Yeah.
made a career scaring everyone about nuclear waste, and I've got, all this background story built up, and it's just unraveling before my eyes as I hang up the phone and think, what is going on? Do you not even believe this?
Did you have to check yourself and go, hang on a second, maybe am I wrong? And then you had to go back and double check again.
Oh yeah. It triggers something, and then you want to rescue your old belief, and you're like, oh, maybe they're right. Maybe there's this other complicated, deep story that I'm just not as smart as them. And so there's a little bit of questioning, but
at some point you recognize the logic versus the fallacy, and you go, okay, well, I now have to reassess and re-baseline my thinking.
Yeah. And then it leads to other questions such as, well, if nuclear waste is bad, but then carbon dioxide emissions are bad, which is worse? Like, you have to tell me which is worse. You can't just say bad things bad, good things good. Like, that's just, it's not economic, right? We've got to evaluate and trade things off.
It's entirely tribal. Yep.
And so I was just like, wow, okay, I've got to now distance myself and only talk to niche engineers and nerds who aren't caught up in this legacy of political and tribal.
Well, maybe that's one of the reasons why you actually did get to the bottom of it, because you were engaged to scratch the surface, but you didn't know much about it to start with. So you went into it with you had some preconceived ideas.
Yep.
But you hadn't researched that. You hadn't bottomed any of that out. And as soon as you started getting to the bottom of the questions, like, oh, hang on a second, some of my assumptions are not correct. And it'd be lovely if more people in the energy space did that. I have a question for you.
Okay.
A few weeks ago, a couple of months ago now, you had me on your podcast.
Yep.
And we talked about some of this stuff. And then you asked Mark, another guy, Mark Diesendorf, to listen to it and then come on your podcast.
Correct.
And he wasn't very flattering or complimentary of me. Is this a tribal conversation you had going one after the other?
Yeah, I think it was. You can see, if I'll put some links in, you can see the unwillingness to engage with the technical question and the economic question.
Yep.
Right? So, for example, Mark would say things like, oh, but Ben doesn't believe in climate change. I'm like, yeah, but that's a different question, right? Even if you believe it, we want to know the cost. Can we look at the cost question? He's like, well, cost doesn't matter because I believe it, right? There's all this deflection back to the tribe, back to the belief. And, that's a common thing, right? Like, you don't want to risk entertaining a hypothetical if it might lead to a conclusion you don't like, and so you avoid even getting into that detail.
Did I fall into that trap, do you think?
I'm sure you do in some ways. The question is, can I recognize it, because we sort of got a bit bogged down on how much does transmission cost and things like that. And
it's hard to be ideological when you're talking dollars of
it is
per kilometer of transmission.
I mean, you can make excuses for cost blowouts for certain projects, or why this one was bad. It was a politically driven one. The classic would be, nuclear is cheap because the Hinkley Point one in the UK, where the costs are ridiculous, that's an abnormal one, so we're going to ignore it. I'm like, well, okay, why? Like, if we can justify it, yes. If we can't, you're just like, my tribe wants nuclear, therefore
I'll
we
cherry pick
gotta,
the facts however I want them.
yeah.
Yep.
But then you have the thing of, okay, so let's not ignore that on your side. But what about transmission costs? Do they blow out sometimes? And should we ignore the cost blowout transmission projects, or should we keep them in to really understand the true cost? Because we don't know what it costs till we do it, and some blow out and some don't for different reasons. And on average, we're going to be paying that. So, yeah, everyone is prone to it. I think it shouldn't be that difficult. I guess I have the lucky thing is I don't care. I don't have a tribe in this anymore.
You're not vested in it, right?
And
that's why I wanted to talk to you about it, because I can see myself, and I have to check myself becoming more tribal sometimes, because I hear some people say things and I'm just straight away going, I don't care what you say. You're an absolute muppet and I don't want to know. Shut up. and this is, and I've got to be very careful, because just some people really trigger me in that way. And I've tested them, and this happens on LinkedIn and Twitter. And I've tested them, and they don't offer anything to me that I haven't heard before, which I haven't already gone down the rabbit hole and dismissed. So now I'm not prepared to actually entertain anything they have to say. Is that a risk, do you think? Do I need to keep listening to these idiots?
It depends how efficiently you'd like to use your time, I think. My economist mind says, your time is yours. It's valuable.
Yep.
You don't have to listen to anyone you don't want, but I guess there is a mode of thinking where you can, what's the best way to put it? Just take a person and filter their claims and go, yeah, I've addressed that one, and just stick to the other one, and then just ignore the rest of what they say.
Yep.
And I mean, I think I've been trained by social media, right? After a while, you start by trying to give everyone the benefit of the doubt and get into every argument. But at the end of the day, if you don't want to deal with that argument because that person clearly is not willing to take the extra step, then just don't.
Yep.
Right? Just go, okay, you said 5 things. I've written about all these before. This one here, I haven't addressed, or I don't think it's got merit, or there is a subtlety here you're missing. I'm just going to say that and move on, because what more can you do?
That's probably a reasonable approach.
It's hard, right? Like
It
I want to write an essay, right? Every time, and I'm just like, here's a link.
Yep.
Like, it's up to you if you want to dig deeper. I'm done with this conversation.
This is the I'm prepared to. I don't need to tell you, but I can show you. Is that the strategy?
I think that's useful.
Yep.
Yeah. Has anyone changed their mind from comments on the internet, on LinkedIn or Twitter?
That's a good point, actually. I don't think anyone does, right?
Because if they haven't, we've got to be a bit more ruthless with our time and go, hey, I'm just putting the links out there. Other people can do it. You might change your mind socially when you see lots of people doing it, but I'm not going to try and sit there and walk you through the logic, because that's not how humans change their mind. That was a life lesson for me. Walking people through the logic is not how they change their mind.
Yeah, indeed. So I started off on social media because I'd started writing about the energy things, and as soon as I started putting words down in more than just 5 words on Facebook, I realized that I wanted to. The internet's forever, and I wanted it to be as correct as possible. Mm-hmm. And that was the start of my journey into the whole talking about it, and culminating at this point in this conversation. Yeah. What I started using the social media to test things. I put stuff out there and I go, all right, what are the arguments that come back? Yeah. And then I go, okay, well, 9 out of 10 are pretty bad, but there's a good one. Let's dive into that side of it. And I actually used that, and I found that quite useful. And then, unfortunately, it's come to the point where now it's very rare that I get a new argument.
Yeah.
And so that's somewhat, I don't want to say the word comforting, but it does reinforce in me that I've actually tested these theories. And now that I'm at the point where I'm putting my own theories out, and I'm going to give you a couple in a minute, which you might like. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. That I think they're entirely worthwhile, those theories, and I can defend them because I'm not putting them out there lightly. So one of them is we talked about. I might as well get one off my chest now.
All right.
With the home batteries and the home solar. Okay. So I'm calling this problem the missing money. So if you think say I went out and spent $10,000 on a battery.
Yep.
And a few $1,000s on solar panels,
Yep.
subsidies, whatever. Put all that to the side. What's actually happening is that $10,000 or $15,000 is going to a battery supplier, and I'm no longer going into the system. I'm not paying an electricity bill anymore. That money for a decade is gone. What do you think about that?
What did you call it again?
The missing money.
The missing money.
So people are opting out of paying into the system, even though they're still connected.
That's okay.
And
so you have to go a bit further. Why is that bad? Isn't that good because they're not using as much load, so you don't have to upgrade transmission and stuff?
So why it's bad is because all that infrastructure still exists. For one, we're not taking anything out, except a few old coal-fired power stations down the track, maybe one day. But we're adding a lot more stuff. All the gigawatts of wind and solar out in the paddocks and the new transmission lines. So we're also not growing we are growing our population, I suppose, but we're not really growing the amount of customers, electricity customers. So every person who invests $10,000 or $15,000 in their home system is a person that's not contributing to a growing cost.
So I think that
So the customer base is falling while the system is getting more expensive.
Are people disconnecting from the grid?
No.
Okay. So this reminds me of the marginal cost controversy in the 1950s in the economics
I don't
journal.
know anything about that.
So basically the problem was this. In the provision of things like utilities, most of the cost is a fixed cost for the infrastructure, but it's priced based on the use. But the cost of extra use or less use once you've made the fixed cost is zero, right? So there's this detachment between the pattern of costs, right? It's all fixed cost, zero cost if you use it, and the pattern of pricing and charging, which is essentially mostly the variable cost, paying for use and not paying the lump sum. And so that was a big debate, and they basically said, well, you need two-part pricing. You got to pay to be connected, to cover the fixed costs, and then pay a very, very little amount for what you use off that fixed cost. And so the economists would say, if you had the pricing right for that, if the being connected at all was charged at a cost-reflective rate of your share of maintaining the infrastructure, then there's no problem with that. But it's going to be pretty much your whole electricity bill. If the marginal cost of providing electricity once you've built the transmission and the power stations is extremely low.
Is the analogy like the mobile phone system? We used to pay for a text message, right? It used to be 50 cents a text message.
Correct. And now we just pay to be connected to the system.
Now we don't have any consumption costs at all, really. It's a fixed monthly cost. Use it as much as you want. Please do. Use it more.
A perfect example. So you can imagine that the electricity network is like mobile phone. You just pay to be connected. You don't pay anything to use it. Well, in that case, a battery's not worth me buying, right? Because if I'm still going to be connected, I'm paying $1,500 a year to be connected.
This is the conversations they're having now in all these reviews, right? Because they've realized that more and more people are getting solar panels. They're not paying for any consumption. And therefore, and they're also getting some kind of subsidy for feeding into the system. So that the income they're getting offsets them paying anything out into the system. So they're net earners from the grid. And hang on a second, someone's got to still pay for it.
Someone's got to pay for the poles and wires because you're still connected. And on that cold winter's night or in that whatever hot summer evening after the sun's gone down.
And the whole system cost is based on that peak demand period. It's not based on averages or anything like that. It's based on the capacity of the transmission lines and the transformers, and they are based on a peak demand. And if you get to that peak demand, it'll meet the peak demand. If it goes over, well, then it can't. So then they go, the network companies who get paid on how much stuff they have and how much it's worth, say, well, the peak demand is going up a little bit. Let's increase the capacity of it, right? And we'll recoup that money even if you don't use it.
So you called it the missing money problem. Another way of describing it as an economist in utility pricing might be a mispricing problem. That we are not pricing to recover fixed costs from those connected to the system. We're trying to recover the fixed costs through use charges. And so there's this, you might call it a price cost mismatch thing, or you might, you could come up with another name. But then the question is, if you did price it to
I
match
think I know where you're
the
going now.
cost, why would you buy a home battery? Because you don't save on electricity use, right?
Okay, yep. I see that.
Because
Yep.
it's like on your mobile phone. Like if you could pay for a gadget to stick on your phone to offset the call costs, when you've got infinite calls for free with your fixed charge, no one's going to buy this device.
Correct. Right. So here's that's an interesting angle. I hadn't actually thought of that, but it's absolutely spot on. The next part though is from the consumer end. If you can afford to opt out of paying for the grid stuff,
Yeah. Okay.
what about the people who can't afford to opt out? Does everyone now have to pay the same fixed cost?
Yeah. So
Or do we have two-tiered pricing for people who have a lot of their own stuff? They're not paying any, because there is a consumption cost at some point.
Yeah.
Because generators have to be paid for, right?
Right.
But on the flip side, if you're a renter, do you still have to pay like the full fee, even though you're using the full system? And what about the people who don't have to pay for the full system because they've got batteries and solar?
Yeah. Well, if they don't connect, if they disconnect themselves,
But no one's going to do that.
Well, yeah. So if you're fully charging for the fixed cost of being connected and at the peak being supplied, then let's say your electricity bill currently is $2,000 a year, and it's what would a good proportion be of fixed versus? Because you do pay $1 a day sort of thing to be connected, don't
No,
you?
it'd be if you include the network stuff in and not just the fixed costs they put on the bills here in Queensland.
Yeah.
It's a very opaque system.
Oh yeah, I think we pay for the ambulance in our electricity bill too, right?
something like 60 to 70% will be fixed cost, transmission costs and retailer costs and other things, and even a portion of the generation cost is still fixed cost because they have a fixed and a variable cost. So the only variable part is the fuel, really.
So we're paying what, 20 something cents a kilowatt hour on electricity in Queensland? Is that right?
No.
What's the retail these days?
40 something.
Really?
Yeah.
I haven't checked for a while. I might have to go check.
You should.
It was 21 cents like 15 years ago when I was working for the QCA, which set that regulated price.
Yep.
You know, the benchmark pricing. So okay, it's 40 cents.
So it's
now.
stretching ahead of inflation, regular inflation actually, which is one of the other topics I want to talk to you as an
is your
economist.
point that most of that rise should be in the fixed cost part of the bill?
And
if it was, then all this offsetting business of solar at home becomes much less economical.
Yeah, this is the way it's all going.
If you're offsetting 10 cents per kilowatt hour and paying $2,000 fixed cost each year, then you're like, why am I offsetting 10 cents a kilowatt and paying the whole fixed cost? Like, I'd rather just go for the efficient provision of fixed costs through the network rather than fixed costs in my house with battery and solar.
Yeah, totally. And this is the way the whole conversation is going. So we've got a Nelson review at the moment, which is some dude, Tim Nelson, is named after him. And they're going through and looking at, we've got to keep the spot market because that's the most efficient way of settling the energy cost, instantaneous energy cost. But I asked him about this whole thing about, well, if you're going to have a lot of people with batteries and solar, which they really, really want, what about the people who don't? And are they going to get stung with the same high fixed costs? And he said that in the webinar where it had the Q&A, I was sitting right here actually. He said transmission costs are out of scope.
Out of scope.
Out of his scope. He didn't want to answer the question. No.
But this is the thing. Back to what we were saying at the beginning. This is what you realize after a while. Electricity is only transmission. Like, if you
the fixed
think
costs are nearly everything.
Like that is the only thing. Like, if you think of transmitting coal from where it exists underground, out of the ground, digging off, that's transmitting the energy to the power plant.
Yep.
Then we're building the thing, we're transmitting it from the coal into the wires. Like that's all there is. There is no other part. So I think economically or conceptually, my big change has been it's all just transmission. There is no like free energy bit at one end or free energy at the other. Like the free energy at your house, that's a battery, that's solar, that's transmitting it from the sun into your wires. So I don't know. I feel like that's a useful way of switching your mindset.
It could be
from the panels are getting cheaper. I'm like, but the whole thing is just transmitting energy around and changing form. I mean, maybe that's an engineering mindset.
Well, even in if you take the renewables people at their word, And they go, okay, batteries and solar panels are getting so cheap, then everyone will have one. And then it's like, okay, but if the sun's free and we're gonna have lots and the wind's free and we're gonna have lots of wind and solar out there, why
Yeah.
would you bother putting it in your own house?
Yeah,
Why don't we
well,
just get it for free from the grid?
Yeah, well, this is another point where I think I've been able to observe myself changing my mind is that um, it makes intuitive sense to offset your use with solar at your house, right? But actually, that is the most cost inefficient way to offset use because large scale grid connected solar should be much more efficient and cheaper, right? It should be angled the right way to the sun. It should be at a
Follows
location.
the sun, right?
Right? It should be better. So why are we doing this distributed, expensive, individualized way?
And the technical way of saying it is your rooftop solar panels, there's a higher unit cost, and they operate in Queensland where it's quite sunny at about 12% capacity factor, whereas your typical solar farm is about 25% capacity
it's
factor.
double.
Right? Yeah, it's twice as good because it tilts and follows the sun.
So I've gone from, well, that was, good to get everyone on board. It's good. And it's, again, it's this lack of thinking about the system and going, well, all those panels we put on roofs could have been put in a field connected to the grid and facing the sun for a much cheaper price.
That'd be an interesting little bit of analysis, actually. We got 16 gigawatts of rooftop solar. What if you just jumbled them up into various regions around the country and, how much extra energy would you get? You'd double the output because of the capacity factor straight away.
Easily, right? And the cost of installing on everybody's roofs and the trees growing up and maintaining them around. Like it's, we just had a tree trimmed and before that we couldn't have got solar because the guys came out and they assessed it and they said, oh, you're not going to get any sunlight here. And you can imagine that
Did you chop down a tree, Cameron, to get solar panels?
I didn't get solar, but I did chop down the tree.
There's different risks of the tree. but the irony is there, though, for those that do.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, that's true for all land use. That's another question. And I think we don't think clearly about land use management and environment either. We have these, again, high-level things, save the koalas, whatever. I'm like, but
koalas need trees.
How do you manage the land? Like, it's okay to use the land because koalas can be there and you can ride your motorbike and you can have a quarry. Like, people think about it badly, and I've changed my view on that. Maybe there's another podcast there. But yeah, the solar one, again, I'm like, it must be. I've got this, like, I'm involved with my own electricity provision. It must be efficient. And I think it was probably Aidan Morrison who just, sort of got me out of that mode of thinking and said, you're an economist, what's the alternative?
Yep.
And I'm just like, whoa, you're right. We could have, how many billions did we spend on solar subsidies from 2005-6 to 2020?
Oh, it's a lot. I mean,
we could have just literally paid for solar.
The RET was somewhere around, even when it was. Well, that's the large scale one, but the small scale one has got to be tens of billions by now.
I remember it was like pre-financial crisis, or maybe just after. My memory is pretty blurry these days of getting subsidized solar at a place. And I can't believe it cost me next to nothing. And I was getting paid back then when electricity cost 20 cents from the grid. I was being paid 45 cents feed in.
Well, I'm on that now because I got solar panels in 2012.
Oh, there you go. And so I'm like,
I haven't paid a proper electricity bill in a decade.
I just
missing
think,
money.
Isn't it weird that you're paying 45 cents a kilowatt hour for me to put it here and offset energy at the easiest time of day to provide energy? That is such an expensive way to add or offset generation in the grid.
And this is part of why I think in future generations of economists will look back at Australia's energy policies and say this is the worst thing anyone's ever done. It's crazy to increase the cost of everything so much.
Here's a question. So I think you're right. And it's going to take a while for that mindset to change because of our social and economic incentives, because everyone feels like they're doing the right thing.
You need a few early adopters and then a few others come along and then a bit of peer pressure and then more people will think this way than others, right? Eventually.
But how hard is it to change your mind from, oh, I'm getting basically free solar and subsidized energy from this program. I must be great because I'm doing it for the environment and I'm getting paid. Win-win. How could it be a bad thing, right? You've got to get through that mindset. like, consider the social guilt of everyone being like, oh, yeah, I didn't pay for electricity for 10 years because of this ridiculous, wasteful subsidy. And that was essentially just cash in my pocket. Like, there's going to be
Meanwhile, my neighbour's paying double.
Yeah, there's going to be this process of overcoming guilt to change minds on this.
That's interesting, actually. Yeah, maybe the psychologist angle will be the mass psychosis of the we're doing good, but actually then along comes someone and goes, well, actually you're not. And how does that actually work? How do people actually change their minds? And maybe it's just a case of, well, we'll just suck it up and we just won't get solar panels next time. I don't know.
Oh, we'll all just forget and say, oh, back then it was the best thing to do, but now it's not. We'll have an excuse. But to get to your point about lowest cost stuff we have this conversation about nuclear. Just think about it. Cast your mind back to when you got your solar at 40 cents feed-in. So you're paying twice the retail for essentially energy when it's not very valuable. So probably 4 or 5 times the full retail price to get this thing. And we're talking about, the cost for nuclear might blow out. And,
they're happy to give me $500 a megawatt hour.
I'm like, well, what do you mean? Your marginal
for
dollar
120, 130 on a larger scale for nuclear. Yeah, exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So you're paying $500 a megawatt hour to get people on rooftop solar, and you're saying, if it blows out from 100 to 200 for nuclear, that's going to ruin the country.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's still cheaper than what you're doing now.
It's a round peg in a square hole, isn't it?
Why can't
it doesn't match up.
Compare those two numbers? And I think there was a social value to getting the buy-in, I think, to this story that we're all, heading the same direction.
Plus, there's just basic greed, and people are like, well, if I've got a spare, because the equipment was a bit more expensive back then. I think I paid about $7,000 for a 3 kilowatt system, and now you'd be flat out paying $3,000. But I was happy to do it because I looked ahead and I thought, well, if electricity prices go up, I'll be saving a lot of money, and my return on investment was like 3 years, and like I said, I haven't paid a proper bill in a decade.
So you've made 15 grand net.
Yeah. So I actually did it put it in a spreadsheet probably at this time last year, and in October 2024, I think I'd incurred $17,000 worth of fees, electricity fees, because it's a net metering system. But I'd only paid $3,000.
Yeah, there you go. So
and then I add the $7,000 for the system, and I've paid $10,000 for $17,000 worth of electricity. Yeah. Okay. This is the missing money, and it's going to get worse with batteries.
And you're still, how long do you get the 40 cents for? It phases out soon, doesn't it?
1st of July 2028.
So you're a few more grand up. Yeah. So
it's not as good now because the incoming costs are so much higher.
Yeah.
But it does offset.
Yeah. So instead of nuclear, instead of some grid scale new generation, instead of just fixing a coal plant or adding another turbine,
let's put a generation of landfill on people's roofs.
We paid you 25 grand or something for 10 grand's worth of electricity.
Yeah.
Maximum 10 grand.
And that's a socialized cost. So my neighbors without solar are, have been paying more than I have for years.
Yeah. So I'll be honest, I only realized this rooftop solar was the worst return on investment way to generate electricity about 2 years ago because Aidan Morrison explained it to me. And I've been, I'd had this journey on nuclear. I've had this journey on the transmission costs, and I'm sort of interested in it, right? It's a hot topic in economics. And it still took me till 2023 to really appreciate that this was the worst way to spend money to generate electricity. And if you think, but what about all the emissions saved? I'm like, but nothing. Like, because it's all offsetting in the wrong time of day, that is so minimal.
Yeah, you got wind farms and solar farms fighting rooftop solar panels. Okay, so that's helpful.
So I guess your listeners know that, but if I put this on my channel, my listeners might not know. There is this, you're alluding to this point now that everyone's saying, but if you built new coal, you just have to only use it some of the time because there's so much solar in the middle of the day, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is the problem is we don't need more power during the middle of the day. We need it more in the evenings, right? Because there's so much solar in the system. And everyone's saying, so we don't need nuclear. We don't need base load. And I think we talked about this. But we also don't need more energy only in the middle of the day when it's sunny, because that's where we actually only need it at night.
We're already
right now.
overpaying for it.
So if you say, well, new nuclear is going to have to wind down for solar, do you know what? New solar is even worse because it only generates when all the other solar is generating.
It makes everything else cost more.
And so in terms of the efficient use of that capital, solar is getting worse at this like dramatic cliff it's falling off, whereas all the other baseload type or 24/7 generation is not getting any worse now because solar's already carved out the middle of the day and all the rest of the day is still flat. And but solar, we don't want anymore. The grid doesn't want it. Like at 3 PM
Negative prices are an indicator of oversupply.
So I find it really interesting that everything, you're probably like 5+ years ahead of most people, and I'm only two years ahead in realizing the economics of this transition. But it's going to be really interesting, I think, the next 2 years when a lot of this new proposed solar doesn't get built because they're like, well, I'm not going to build enough batteries for overnight plus enough solar to recharge them and supply the grid and get paid and charge the batteries each day and perhaps charge them
It's even slightly worse than that because to earn income from the renewables, the wind, the industrial wind, and industrial solar, somebody has to sign a contract to take the power. So why would you sign a contract to take power? Say it's $60 a megawatt hour, right, for a solar farm, but it generates when the spot market is zero.
Yeah.
Why would you pay $60 when you can pay zero?
Yeah.
So no one's going to sign a contract with these stupid things. This is the reality of it all, right? And it's all going to come unfolded very, very soon. So I liked your analogy where you gave me some props for being 5 years ahead. And but I'm thinking, what does the future look like?
Okay.
So now that when you get to the realization, like as you're starting to, that there's some real problems and not even just in the physical side, just in the money side, right? Like who's going to do it? Who's going to pay for it?
Yeah.
And where does the money come from? When you think ahead and you go, okay, well, there are coal-fired generators which are getting old, particularly in New South Wales. New South Wales is really in trouble. How does this get unfurled in the future? Say you had a sane government come in with all the best intentions in the world and the right people who are not ideological and they're like, we just want to fix it. For me, the end goal is everyone should have the cheapest possible grid electricity and all the rooftop solar fades away over time and the batteries fade away over time. We're still looking at a 30-year problem. This is not something that can be fixed overnight, right? It's not even in a 5-year window. And this is multiple elections and cycles, right? This whole thing has to phase out over a generation of politicians and experts. It's crazy how bad this has gotten.
Is that because there's so much solar already connected that exists right now, and that it's going to just stop? There'll be no economic payoff for connecting any more of this, and people will realize that we don't want any more. In fact, less is better, but no one's going to turn it off. Until they get some.
So you can't force a company. You can't force a private company to run at a loss. That's like the existing coal-fired power stations, and you can't force a company to build a new nuclear power station which is going to run at like a very low output for 30 years and not make any money.
Yeah.
You also can't go in and rip people's solar panels off their roofs and you can't tear up contracts with existing wind and solar farms. What the hell do you do?
Well, people probably will take the solar panels off if you start pricing the connection, the transmission as a lump sum.
This is where we come into how do we deal with it, right?
Once you phase out of your subsidized feed-in...
Well, you don't have to take it off. You just flick the switch in the circuit board, in the switchboard, and you're like, okay, solar's off, done, right? This is potentially where it has to go. You have to start penalising. You have to stop subsidising and start penalising. And this is a really unattractive option for politicians, right? They don't like it. The bureaucracies a couple of years ago started talking about this because they're like, the rooftop solar is a technical problem now. And the technical problem overrides the economic problem every single time.
I mean, is it...
Well, you can't let the lights go out.
On the grid you can't, but you can just build a few more coal plants where they exist, and can't you?
Well, you can.
Can't
this is something I
because
think
a lot of this coal power stations have coal mines. Like they're built on coal mines.
Yeah, that's the point of them. Yeah.
So you just build another building with another
So
turbine
this
or two in
is
it.
leading into the next phase of the conversation,
Like-
which is government versus private. Hi, Sonia. Don't come on camera. We're busy over
don't
here.
walk here. But it's nice to meet you.
This is Cameron.
How are you?
We can edit this out later. It's fine.
Or not, whichever the audience
cameo.
likes.
Can you put the coffee pot on, please?
maybe
Maybe you should bake something since you're in the kitchen.
We're editing that.
traditional roles here.
Oh my God, climate change is not important. All right, we may as well just wait. We may as well wait.
I will.
No, we can talk about other contentious social, political conversation.
Oh man, there's umpteen to choose from at the moment. This is everything's tribal, Cameron. Everything.
Sonia, are you tiring of the energy conversation? Good call. Yeah, my wife tunes out too.
The glazed eyes. Don't want to hear it.
I heard about that. Well done. This is the life of an engineer's wife, teaching how to use words appropriately.
How to communicate.
Yeah. Okay. These days, though, doesn't everyone like the autist engineer? Like Elon Musk.
The weirdo introvert. Yeah.
He's normalized the stumbling through technical stuff on stage to millions, and everyone's like, "Oh, okay, so that's fine."
If only everybody could break everything 10 times and then finally get it right, and not and then make a lot of money in the process, right? Good grief.
I don't know.
He's done well.
Don't teach him too much, because smooth talkers, people are a bit wary. Oh, this is too good.
The rise of the nerds.
Yeah. That's.
And then it becomes in my now engineering life, and I'm writing something. When I'm writing, say, a scope of work or a technical specification for something, you appreciate less words.
Yeah.
Less, if you can get the message across in a better way and you can phrase it right, it's easier to read. And if it's easier to read, you're communicating better, right? That's just choice of adjectives. It's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with. Don't be ranty is a huge writing lesson. I'm with. Yeah. No, that's like the blogger's journey is ranty to just like, here's a super sharp point.
Yep.
And it's a bit tricky, I think, to bring people from different backgrounds to get to the reason that super sharp point's important.
Yeah.
But you got
to build it up, right? And then get
but
there.
only at the minimum needed.
Yes.
Because you don't want to be
too many steps is too hard.
You don't want to be some people think this and they're idiots. Some people think that they're idiots. Some people think this and this is why I'm right. You've just told all your audience from 3 different backgrounds that they're all idiots, right? You got to say, this is super important for a debate about this, and it's, we don't know that. This is super important for this. Here's my super sharp point. I'm your friend because I'm so super smart.
I think.
Do you think that? Yeah, I'm with you. But don't alienate your readers before you make your point clearly. Yeah.
I think a reasonable way to approach it is, here's how I think about it.
Yeah.
And if you come on the journey, that's fine.
Yeah.
If you think I'm wrong, whatever. You're an idiot. I've learnt.
Yeah, no, he's good now. What were we up to?
We were going to dive into government versus private because we talked about the rooftop solar and the problems it's getting in, and I started talking about the future impacts of that and how to actually how a government or a society might extricate itself from this stupid problem that we've got ourselves in. And I think the only possible way, and you mentioned, we'll just stick some coal, put some power stations on some coal mines and be done with it. I'm like, that's really good. I like that. I'll take that.
Well, I've been convinced that that's the only logical thing to do, and you can have concerns about the climate, but if you
this is
still
based
want
on
to
getting
pass
a
cost
logical
benefit,
outcome of lowest possible prices, right?
I think lowest possible price is past the cost benefit, because this idea that there's some amazing social benefit from a certain different amount of carbon dioxide in 50 years and a slightly different temperature, like it's just not that important. And this is another thing I've changed my mind.
It's not going to affect our daily lives.
Is actually that's not such a big deal, really. Like, we have had droughts and we have had floods and all that, and we're going to keep having them. And the marginal difference from our efforts is so small compared to the cost. And even if we add it all up globally, it would still be true that this is just a thing where we do normal old cost benefit and go, hey, we can take those guys on their word about whatever's going to happen in the future. And even if we do, cost benefit says, hey, let's just get cheap energy, be rich, deal with anything that comes up.
My angle on this is the disease, the cure is worse than the disease with the net zero stuff, right? The emissions reduction. And we've flourished along with electricity, and now we're dependent on it. It's not something that's optional. And if you make it cost too much, it has to become optional for some people. Most people will deal with it, and then businesses, it becomes optional. Like, well, I can get it cheaper over there in the USA or wherever they want to go, and that becomes a real problem, a much bigger problem than even if you take the worst of the climate change stuff and you go, okay, the sea level is going to rise a little bit, or the temperature is going to get more extreme. That can be managed, but no electricity cannot be managed.
Correct.
So my ultimate goal for all policies should be the lowest possible cost, but the overriding factor will be security. They swap sometimes. If you've got excess supply and you've got very secure, yes, that can actually be quite cheap. Like we used to have in the early 2000s, we had oversupply, and life was great.
Yeah,
it was cheap. But now we're verging into scarcity, depending on what the weather's doing, because so much of our supply is dependent on the weather. And this is a real problem for us, because then if you need something to step in and fill the gaps, which is becoming like the gas, battery, hydro scenario, that's going to be very expensive, and it's always going to be very expensive. That's a problem.
Yeah. I mean, I would put numbers on very expensive. Like, yes, very expensive for electricity relatively, and maybe it costs 30% more in 10 years in real terms, and that's for electricity. That's a massive change.
Well, we're worse than that now.
For the economy as a whole, it's always good to remember the economy is a big, complex machine, and energy is a small bit. And although it's integral to everything else, so is labor, so is land, so is capital, so is everything, right? So yes, it's an issue, and yes, it's important, and it's integrated. I would agree that your security point means that despite its low price, or its the total value of all electricity, to give you an example, what's energy as a proportion of the household budget? 1.3% or something,
it's a couple
right?
percent, right?
So if it goes up 20%, we're at 1.45 or whatever the number is. I can't do that number in my head right now.
I think it's more than that. I think it's something like 230%.
We can fact check that. But it's a small percentage number. And
in
so
total,
even if it goes up,
although I'll qualify that, I agree, like on a daily amount. But if you went from having a $300 a quarter electricity bill to a $600 a quarter electricity bill, you notice it at that point in time, because you're like, shit, maybe I can't send the kid on school camp this year.
Yeah, and there's also electricity commercially used as well, right? So it's not just household use. but it's a small fraction of the overall economy. And even if it goes up in price and because we've put solar instead of coal or whatever, we can manage that. I think your point about security and the riskiness is you can't really appreciate that in this sort of standard economic framework. Like if the power went off for a week for some reason, that the cost of that is so enormous relative to many other things.
Well, did you lose power during the Cyclone Alfred?
No.
Didn't? Yeah, we were off here for 46 hours.
Oh, yeah. So that's just power off for one suburb or two suburbs for a couple of days. You know, if the whole state turned off, was it South Australia? The whole state turned off?
Yeah.
You know, if that stuff happens regularly, I mean, the cost to sort of insure for that, to back up that, is very high. And so I would say that despite its small proportion of, you know, the economy, the risk if it fails or because it's so integrated with things actually
security parts
means there's some kind of value to it that isn't in the price.
It's typically in the wholesale market, which is what it's meant to do is obviously balance the frequency, the supply demand, which is measured on the frequency. And it's also meant to dispatch in the merit order with the cheapest generator first, and then the most expensive one sets a clearing price. The value of lost load, vol, which is the top market price, that's roughly what it's meant to equate to, right?
Which is value of security.
Yeah. So it's meant to be going, well, we'd rather pay that than lose the power.
Yeah. And I mean, people would say, well, you get enough solar and batteries, the risk is still low. But anyway, your point. Where were we? I just wanted to give some scale perspective.
Yeah, no, that's a point well made, actually.
There's that story that, well, energy's in everything. And I'm like, yeah, everything's in everything. That's the economy, right?
Yep.
People are in everything. Land is in everything. You know, trucks are in everything.
So this is a great sort of cost of living topic, right? So when I look at the electricity costs and I go, okay, it's now what? $8 for a 500 gram block of butter. It used to be $5.
Oh yeah, I mean,
and then some of that cost is going to be associated with the refrigeration of it, and the refrigeration is electricity cost. Some of that cost is going to be in the manufacture of it, and some of that is electricity cost.
Oh yeah, just always remember, but about half of the cost of everything that's made is people's salaries.
Yes.
So when we go, energy's in everything, you know, energy is a small fraction of 50%. Because people are half the economy. So I think, yes, it's in everything. I don't.
We're paying $17 or $15 or $17 for a pint of beer in Brisbane City now, depending on which pub you're at.
Okay, so a bit of an economics interlude is that if the energy cost or the electricity cost was causing the price of beer and the price of butter, well, we should see that the cost for electricity at a house is rising more than in proportion than for other goods and services, right? And I don't know how much more it is. We did that graph the other day, right? We deflated it. It was like 20% more or something like that.
Than the CPI?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that, energy is in everything story is a little bit overplayed. I think the reliability of having a grid and having access to fuel is almost as big a story as the price of it. Right? Like
because not having it is very bad.
Yeah, which is why the US has like a buffer stock of fuel in tanks, right? And
it has our buffer stock.
Right? So because they're like, well, fuel is cheap, but do you know what's expensive? Not having it for a period.
Yeah, if your diesel supply chain shuts down, what are you going to do?
So that would be my more subtle
which is one of the arguments that people make in favor of industrial wind and solar in particular, and they go, well, we don't have to depend on supply chains. I'm like, well, you kind of do, because you can never have. What about nighttime? What about when it's not windy, right?
Well, this is again.
It's more risky.
Exactly, right. So how do you store that? It's not like you can just get the coal out of the ground. Oh, the coal is flooded. Okay, we have to dry it, or we have to do something. Yeah, you're definitely right. But we were talking about what happens from here, and
well, I think in the future, because you've got these intractable problems. You've got stuff that's installed. You've got stuff that's old. They are facts that you can't get away from. There's contracts signed. Okay, all that has to be brought in, and then the solution is going to be, right, we're going to we're going to change some policies,
Mm.
and maybe we're going to build something and it's going to run at break even or less for 20 years because the security angle is so important, and we've got a goal at the end. We've got a light at the end of the tunnel, which says that's where we want to be. And
Okay.
I'd really like to see that. So apparently, David Janetsky, Queensland Treasurer and Energy Minister, is coming out with a roadmap, an energy roadmap.
Okay.
And the Greenies are very upset because he said we're going to keep the coal going as long as we can. And I would be like, well done. One small clap for sanity, right? And if you can keep, because it's an existing asset, it's a sunk cost. It's mostly paid off.
Free to keep it going, essentially.
The coal in
Why
the
would you
ground
turn it
doesn't
off?
change cost. It might cost a little bit more in wages or diesel to get out in operating costs, but the fixed cost of it is the same. It doesn't matter what century it's dug up in, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's a little bit of sanity creeping in. And maybe if Queensland in 20 years' time has shown stable supply of energy, and maybe the people living in Queensland have a lower cost of living, even though it's marginally smaller because of what you've explained before. And maybe one of the bigger things is industry comes to Queensland. Maybe industry shut down Tomago in New South Wales, and they go, well, actually, we still want to make it in Australia, but we're going to have to do it in Queensland. Is that something that you think might be the way?
I think that makes total sense to me, that one area will buck the trend and do something different, and people will compare. Like I said with the nuclear, we'll watch other countries do something. And I think your Queensland example makes sense. I don't know what this plan is from the new Queensland government.
We haven't seen it yet.
But you can imagine a situation in 5 years' time where South Australia and Victoria, people are comparing the cost of their electricity to Queensland and going, oh, we're double Queensland. That's interesting.
Yeah, that sucks.
Double is quite a lot when I'm paying a couple of $1,000s a year. What's going on?
What are the jobs? Can I get a job in Queensland and buy a house?
Right. So, and I think that will also be true globally. We'll see parts of the US, right, doing certain things. Parts of Europe realizing, hey, solar and wind is worse in Europe, right? There's not as much sun. It's way harder to juggle everything we're doing here. So I think that sounds plausible to me, that one state will go their own way. Everyone will compare. Mm-hmm. And I think,
but that takes time, right? That's a decade or two. And we're still going to be arguing about it.
Yeah, it takes time. So it does take time. Well, that's fine. As long as the lights are on in the meantime, we'll have a 2-decade era, maybe.
Do you have any philosophical problem with government ownership of assets like power stations and transmission lines and all that kind of stuff?
None at all, because I'm a hippie lefty who likes communism, apparently, some people say.
I love it. We'll snip that and put that
yeah, snip that, whatever. That'll get the views.
Yeah.
We don't have a problem with government ownership, right? No one really does. We have a problem with dysfunctional management of things.
Is a way
of private or public. So Telstra is now private. Guess what? People still think it's dysfunctional. And, but
the NBN will be
the city,
whatever it is.
The city council in Brisbane, I use it as my example. I said, would you rather Brisbane City Council run something or Telstra? And everyone go, I'll take Brisbane City Council. Because you just call the number and they fix stuff, right? Oh, there's a dead possum. Oh, there's a tree across the bike track. And it is a really functional organization, even compared to some private ones. So I think we don't actually care. We just want things to work.
Yeah.
And I've sort of evolved an agnostic view to this, that, hey, if this public organization is dysfunctional and there's political barriers to reorganizing it or firing people or whatever, privatize it. Let someone else use the social license to downsize, fire, restructure.
How would you measure?
And if you need it for security reasons or whatever, go and buy it back or buy a majority share or buy a stake.
Yep. How would you measure that dysfunction though? Is it a case where the inefficiencies in the state ownership, which might be too many people employed or excess wages or whatever the working conditions are, like there's an inefficiency there versus a super efficient, sharp private model, but with the profit margin on top?
How do you measure it? Yeah, this is really hard.
Yeah.
And it gets harder so back to cost benefit, right? What's the best thing to do from now? It's even harder if you're just throwing out subsidies and hiding the costs and not knowing what your actual benefit is.
Yeah.
Whereas if you own a network Well, you know exactly what you're paying for everything and exactly what people are paying at the other end. So the cost benefit is much more clear when you own the network or you own the whatever. But if you hide this subsidy in everyone's rooftop solar,
Mm.
we don't know if that was efficient. That probably would, you can imagine if instead of it being a distributed subsidy to everyone, it was a federal or whichever government, it's a state government solar installer that runs on this dollar value of subsidy, and we put all those costs and benefits onto one organization. Everyone who worked to put solar on into one organization, you might go, that was the most inefficient thing I've ever seen in my life, right? For that cost to get that and employ that many people, what a joke. But because it's distributed through this hidden subsidy and lots of little small businesses installing solar, it just disappears into the land of just government waste, and it's a line item in the budget somewhere. So I'm a little bit torn, right? Because if you put everything under one roof, it's very obvious what you're spending and what you're getting. And if you hide it through all these distributed subsidies, very unclear the bang for your buck. But the problem is if you chuck it all under one roof, you can also get on the wrong track, like use the wrong technology, do the wrong thing, where the distributed one, you get the chance for some people to go broke.
Make better decisions.
The other guy goes, no, never install solar like that. Do it like this. So that's just a classic economic argument for market experimentation, right? The big organization has trouble building in the ability to experiment and change. Whereas if you just let 1,000 blossoms bloom, whatever, the Bob Catter line that Queensland politician for listening. Then you allow for that experimentation, you work out.
And that's the efficiency of the market to finding the best option, right? But yeah, I also struggle with the private versus government owned, because on one hand I'm like, I want the cheapest possible system, but then should electricity, because it's so basic and critical and fundamental to just being alive and functioning, should it be set up for profit making? And I'm like, well, I kind of like, well, if it could be managed where the costs were controlled, yeah, sure, profit, go for it, because that's some kind of overhead. Whereas if you bring it all back and you operate it at cost by a state government,
then the cost just goes up.
There's a lot of inefficiencies there, so it's going to cost a lot anyway.
So, like most organizations are a sort of a hybrid, right? So even large private organizations tender out to other people, right? And they use the market competition of that process to get prices and get someone else who knows what to do. And the government does it as well. I mean, I don't know what you're involved with, but the train station upgrades, there's a bunch of engineering firms who've tendered and have different contracts, and they're working out.
Well, the government's just a client, right?
Correct. So public ownership can mean political interference and bureaucracy and stagnation, but it can also mean just, some few extra people, bit of overcapacity, but, they're managing the private market and they're using private people to experiment and work out how to build what they want, and they just control the process. And so probably, even if the government said, we want to build a bunch of public new generators, there's going to be a whole bunch of engineering firms and contractors come in and do it, and the more they do, the better they'll get at finding who's good.
I think the construction side and that's all cool. I think
so. The ownership and the management is, if you can separate it, then the government can say, well,
we should be able to contract that out, because companies contract out whole maintenance teams, right?
That's right. So if there's a security reason for the government to own it and to build certain things that are maybe in excess of what's needed right now, then that's a sort of political decision. But as long as we don't just sort of feather the nest of just employing everybody and allow for that experimentation, then that's sort of where we get to on most big.
Okay. Yeah, I can accept
So I don't have a philosophical problem with it, but I definitely have experienced in government when there's a politically sensitive area, it's very hard to actually do efficient things.
Okay.
Because there's always like, what's the minister going to say? How does that look about this? And you're like, oh my God, can we just do it?
Yeah.
These guys want to do it. We want to pay them. Stop changing your mind, right? And I think a lot of government organizations are hidden. They work fine when they're not politically sensitive. They just plug along and they build this and they manage this and it's fine. Wouldn't it be great if energy was just this boring thing that was like, Energy, oh, it's just this cheap thing. You get your connection. You pay a couple of grand a year. You use as much electricity as you want. What's the big deal?
That's the dream. That is the dream. That is a good way to explain it. Actually, it's like it should be boring, and no one should know what the the minute and the second of the next coal-fired power station is that's closing. No one should care.
Like it should be like your mobile phone. You're like, oh, I went and got this plan. Okay.
Oh,
why?
Optus stuck up another tower somewhere. Okay.
Yeah, like
Care factor.
like if as long as it's $80 a month or whatever, I'm fine.
100%.
Who cares? Like if they give me a free phone or a free dishwasher, I'm like
as long as my credits roll over, I'm good.
Yeah, like wouldn't that be amazing? And are there places like what's it like in France? I wonder because they've had this nuclear thing for a long time. Do you know? Do you just go connect me up to the system and someone just turns a switch and you're like, boring?
I don't have that many acquaintances in France. I could probably.
Get given the
podcast. Given the degrees of connection these days, you could probably wouldn't be that too hard to find someone. But yeah, when you look at the international comparison of sort of retail electricity, it's actually very difficult to nail it down because they've got different cost structures and all that kind of stuff. But France is not as high as Australia, but not that far behind. Like all of Europe's getting pretty expensive, and I think they're really gonna.
They have an integrated energy supply, right? So the French sell into Germany and Switzerland and Italy
UK.
And so it's very hard to say what would it be like if you just had this legacy of nuclear reactors, big boring things sitting around, generating. Speaking of France, the interesting thing is their air pollution indexes. Do you notice? You're not seeing any maps of Europe air pollution during the summer. France is like this beautiful pollution-free bubble.
Oh, is it?
Right? Because
they don't have coal-fired power stations.
Yeah. Whereas the Germans now have this pretty average coal they're burning now, right?
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. So add that to your next.
Well, you can. I did go down the rabbit hole of air stuff because having done engineering work at power stations with their condition, their what do we call it? The CEMS. Environmental monitoring, continuous environmental monitoring systems.
Oh, yeah.
You get some tubes stuck in the exhaust stack,
and
that sucks some gases down, and it goes through different monitors and all the rest of it, and analyzes, and you get a result, and you can monitor it continuously. But when you look at the air quality around the place, Victoria is quite good at this. They have air quality measurement stations, and you can look at them on the internet.
Oh, cool.
So I like to go to the one which is at Traralgon, which is Gippsland, which is where all the brown coal-fired power stations are, which is Loy Yang A, Loy Yang B, and Yallourn. And before that, it was Hazelwood, and it was also Morwell. And the air quality there's great. I don't know if you've ever been to Traralgon, but it's a fantastic place.
Yeah, I haven't, but
it's
I know
beautiful.
where it is. Yeah,
lovely. And the air quality stuff is a lot easier to deal with when in a controlled environment like an exhaust stack than it is trying to control the weather and get your wind turbines spinning. Cameron, we're gonna have to wrap it up very soon. My last sort of little talking point here is titled "Looking Ahead."
Yeah, great.
To the future. We've talked a little bit about the future, and in terms of energy, and I don't know, feel free to bring in the wider economy and maybe even some global events. What are we looking at over the next couple of decades? Do you think more turmoil, more stability? Are we going to turn a corner? More of the same?
Yeah, if you're a betting man, you have to just say more of the same, right? So,
which is pretty interesting these days because it could be up and down. We've had the COVID stuff. We had, then we had the Ukraine stuff. Now we've got the tariff stuff.
Oh, look,
changes of governments everywhere. Assassinations.
I think the general vibe I get, and hey, I don't know anything, is countries are becoming more inward looking and thinking more about, hey,
except China.
Don't know about anything about China really, but the US trumps like America first, tariffs on this, let's get energy superpower type stuff. Europe's going to have to look inward and go, energy, what were we doing here? That's true. I think migration globally, the post-COVID boom has triggered a lot of, hang on a minute, shouldn't we look after our people and our economy first? Because there was a bit of a post-COVID boom, but that's dropped off. New Zealand's been in recession. Canada is, US has pretty much, that boom's over.
Is that just net incoming people, or is that people who are staying a long time?
Sorry, no, the economy's turned. immigration in New Zealand's turned. They're all in Australia now.
Of
Canada
course.
has just changed their policy because they had this enormous spike, like 6 times the number of immigrants in 1 year. And so they've essentially said, sorry, you guys don't get visas anymore.
Okay.
And so they're going to have a net migration next year.
Mm-hmm.
Europe, yeah. So I guess it's part, to get to the vibes of it all, because that's all I'm going on, right? It's a bit of an inward turn of like, what do we want to do? What should we invest in? And I think part of that turn is also governments are allowed to do things again, right? So
is this just the normal pendulum swinging
I
different
suspect
ways?
so,
We looked
yeah.
out for too long. We're going to be great for everybody, and then all of a sudden, hang on a second, we got some issues we need to sort out here.
I think, yeah, that's how I see it. And when I say pendulum swing, most people are not going to notice anything, right? Australia's a big, rich country. If energy's, if all the things we've talked about happen and Queensland has cheap energy, people won't even notice. It won't even be in the news. It'll be people in South Australia wanting cheap energy.
Well, that's
here.
actually a truism, because in my job, my main role is fixing things and getting things to work, solving problems.
Yeah.
You don't talk about things that are fixed.
Yeah. So there you go. Exactly. So that's what I suspect. We'll adjust a few things, then we'll stop talking about them and complain about other things. But that's just true of life in general. I wish I had some prediction. If on housing markets, people often ask me, "What do you think's going to happen?" Melbourne's going to be a good place to invest, and Brisbane's not. Would be my prediction on
right.
that.
Okay.
So Brisbane's got historically high house prices relative to Sydney and Melbourne right now. And one city can't just have high house prices forever relative to others, because people won't move there anymore.
Yep. It changes the demand, right? High prices fix high prices. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So we call it spatial equilibrium.
Okay.
A place with high prices, people stop moving there because the prices get high.
Demand shrinks.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that would be my only prediction of the future. What about you? What's your vibe? You talk to a lot of energy people, energy-aware politicians, technical people. What's the vibe shift, do you think, has there been any swing, or are you so far ahead of this realization on renewables and subsidies that you think it's going to still be 5 years before something changes?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the nuclear debate in Australia really opened some people's eyes.
Really?
Yeah, I think it was necessary to have, and I think they realised that because they didn't win the election on the basis of nuclear, that a lot of the pro-nuclear fraternity, they're all generally good people, even though I will have disagreements with them from time to time.
Oh yeah.
They have to win their argument on cost. Like the security thing is kind of a given. But most people will respond to cost versus winning on emissions reduction, because the average person will go, but your wind turbines and your solar panels get emissions reduction and they're cheaper, so go away with the nuclear, right? Exactly. And that isn't even bringing in any of the Helen Caldecott arguments and all that kind of stuff, right? So the energy space, because it is intractable, so many people are invested in one side of the argument, and a lot of people are and that's kind of the renewables lobby. Like, you've got your renew economy types and your Greens politicians and your Climate 200 and all that kind of stuff, right? They're all sort of one issue people. Like, they've got more renewables, and you don't hear them say anything else really, even if there's stuff presented to them which says, maybe you're wrong, maybe you should think about it again. So I don't think any of those people are going to turn the corner. They're going to continue, and with growing threats from, say, like people like me and other people who are starting to put the right arguments together. Finally, it's been a while, but we can now make a good argument and say, well, like I said at the top of this discussion, which part of the supply chain does renewables make cheaper? And more people are, in just a general populace, are starting to ask those kind of questions. There's a lot of community groups, which there's a climate misinformation inquiry going on at the moment. But the idea of that, which is raised by the Greens, the idea of that is to shut down the opposition to transmission lines, because it's all community groups, grassroots stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
I do find it interesting that nuclear will never get up because communities will oppose it. but all these transmission lines will be fine.
Yeah. And all the other stuff that goes with it, right?
I'm like,
exactly.
Okay.
So there's
So
all
have
that
you
part of it, and I think we're going to be having the same type of conversation for a long, long time as the costs keep going up, as the coal power stations get older, and eventually and not too far in the future. I'd say where are we? 2025. I'd say before 2030, there'll come a situation where it'll be a hot day in February. Let's say 17th of February, 2028.
Okay.
Let's do it. Lock it in. 4 o'clock in the afternoon, peak demand. It'll be a hot year, peak demand. It'll be dry, so like the hydro be limited. There'll be a little bit of shortage of gas. It'll be really hot, so there won't be much wind. And on the solar panels and everything derates in the temperature as well. A lot of the existing coal will be derated, and a coal unit will trip, and New South Wales will go down. That will take it down because there won't be enough other stuff to back it up. Like it'll just happen, right? And people will be like, "Coal, I told you it was bad." And then then that will be
that'll trigger actually a bunch more people to come.
It'll be a catalyst for a bigger conversation because then more experts who actually have a lot more. I don't really consider myself an expert because I don't have the. I'm not in the bureaucracy. I'm not in the system. I'm outside the system looking in.
Maybe you're an engineer who works in power.
Indeed, yeah.
That's all you know.
Yeah, that's all right. That's all I know.
Yeah.
But the people who are in the bureaucracies have travelled around these bureaucracies, like the heads of these, the AEMC and all the rest. They've been in these systems for years. Like Kerry Schott was in the Productivity Commission. She was the one who sold off the generators in New South Wales 15 years ago. I'm like, good grief. These people just don't get out of the system. They're all the problem. All these dinosaurs who think the same way all go to each other's parties and send each other friggin' flowers on their birthdays, whatever they do. They need to go. That needs to happen. And a sane government will actually reset that bureaucracy and get rid of those people because that's the inability of those bureaucracies to control the politicians and tell them that the politicians, this is a stupid idea. You're going to fuck this up. For me, that's the main problem.
Interesting. So you suspect maybe a political change, a new government is needed for that, a bit of a
absolutely,
yeah.
So and maybe not even the current version of the LNP. I'm not entirely convinced that they're able to do it. I think it needs more than that, and I think the catalyst is going to have to be something, a significant event which wakes up more of the population, and they start going, hang on a second, this isn't working. What's going on?
So you said that some people are waking up. Have you noticed? Like, I would say I've gone on a journey learning and being like, actually, all those high-level stories that feel good don't really pass the economic test, the cost-benefit. Have you noticed other people either in that bureaucracy that you talked about or, involved in the public conversation who can shift some people at the margins? It's just me, or there must be a few people around, right?
The problems are in the leadership. I think the regular Joes who are in the engine room of these bureaucracies know that there's issues.
Okay.
And I talk to people and they say, we can't do anything about it.
Really?
That's not my swim lane. I'm just in here pushing these buttons, or doing these spreadsheets, or doing this data stuff. That's the reality. They're big organizations, and the leadership does what the leadership does because they get invited to the talks and they get up on the podium and they're handed a microphone and they go, renewables are good.
But would it be true that some of those frustrated people in the organization will leave and do something else and make it known that, hey guys,
I would love a whole whistleblower session to happen. I think, but I don't think we're going to get it. I think the job security is too good. People are well paid.
And you think there's selection into it anyway, that they all believe it anyway. So it takes a bit of convincing.
Well, I pulled a quote from Audrey Zibelman a few years ago from a podcast. She was the former head of AEMO before Daniel Westerman.
Okay.
Malcolm Turnbull brought her in after the previous guy had a heart attack early in life, but he was actually meant to be pretty good. Anyway, that's sordid history. But Audrey Zibelman was on a podcast and said, well, she what did she say? Something about the podcast. The interviewer asked her, so what about the AEMO employees? Do they prioritize keeping the lights on or emissions reduction? Now, she could have answered this question
Yeah.
any old way.
Yeah.
She chose to answer, oh, we prioritize emissions reduction and then keeping the lights on. I'm like, that's a dumb thing to do, right?
Yeah, because turning the lights off solves emissions.
In Earth Hour 2005, I was sitting on a balcony over in Morningside, and this is, remember Earth Hour? They turned the lights out.
Yeah.
And somebody drove by in their car with their headlights on.
Oh,
I thought, well done. Anyway, but it goes to show, like, if you're talking to the psychology professionals about answering that question in that way, what does that show about how that person thinks about the whole thing? Like, she's on a energy podcast.
Yeah.
Presumably, most of the people listening to the podcast are energy professionals who actually have an interest in it, or more than a passing interest in it. And she chose to answer that emissions reduction was a higher priority than keeping the lights on. I guess that doesn't sit well with me.
Yeah, I guess I've learnt not to take those things too much to heart, because she will be trained to have certain lines that she repeats in public. I guess, again, my views changed. Consider these bureaucrats making public statements as little robots that were told a bunch of lines.
But they're so powerful.
Do they believe it? Most of them have a bit of sense, right? But are very aware that I can't contradict the minister in my statement and stuff like that. So they will just say whatever is needed for that audience.
I wouldn't cut them that much slack. I think they should be allowed to say, we disagree with this. We don't think it's a good idea.
In an ideal world,
it might shortcut their career. But I think at some point they're like, well, what's the point of this organization if its charter is to look after consumers?
I mean, this is just politics, right? You go, do I say what I need to say now for the greater good? Well, yeah, I'm going to, because I actually think I can do something useful. And I think a lot of bureaucrats think that. So when they have these public statements they disagree with, they're actually doing, well, I got to keep my job, because if that dodo there gets my job, he's going to mess it all up, and I'm trying to do something good. So I do cut them a bit more slack these days. I used to work in the Queensland government, and I observed this theatrics of talking in public versus, hang on guys, here's a real problem, and people running around like little minions trying to fix something that no one wants to say a word about. So there is some of that as well. I'm just very wary of, was that like a glimpse behind the curtain, or is that just a random public statement to keep the minister happy so that there's some other issue going on?
Yeah, I'm so skeptical. I'm so skeptical of the whole arrangement now, because you've got people like Ziebelman was in there saying those things, and you've got Westerman in there saying that the integrated system plan is the lowest cost option, when it is clearly not, and he was forced to say and he dances around it so badly.
Oh yeah,
and it's so annoying. I'm just like, just say what is without the bullshit, and he can't, and that says to me that he's a political appointee. He's put there for the reason of pushing the agenda, and he's not meant to be. He's meant to be there doing cost benefit analysis and coming up with the best recommendations, but the organisation is channeled down this direction for a certain reason, and it's political, and it's all garbage.
And maybe that organisation is not competent and is not understanding things properly and not informing the minister or others of what they actually know, and maybe we need to get rid of all of them. I don't know. I don't know anything about it. It might be true, but I think the issue you've just said was what Aidan Morrison has raised many times, is you can't say this is not a full cost assessment and also say this is the lowest cost way of generating. And they want to have it both ways with this assessment.
And they're being cute with it.
And they want to say, oh no, solar's the cheapest. Is this a full cost assessment? No. This is a plan for system integration.
It's an optimal path.
Yeah, it's an optimal what? Oh, well, it's not full cost. It's just a different thing.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, maybe there is too much politics there, and maybe there's so much momentum here that, as you say, the power has to go out. New government something has to stop this momentum. And maybe it's Queensland. Maybe it's the current Queensland government just does something different.
Yeah, and they need to stay in government. So I understand the small target, and well, if they're going to prioritise the consumers and the community and the energy users, I'm all for it. I think that's a good idea.
Let's find out.
Thanks, Cameron. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks, Ben.